So this will be a response to Rocky BR420, who posted 3 videos about one of my responses to Piro about metaphysics. And, he was saying that if what I meant by metaphysics, that we can never really get out of doing metaphysics, is that we're always going to have to interpret our experience, then Rocky seemed to agree with me. And I think, I mean that we need to always be interpreting our experience, that it always comes to us as meaningful, even when it seems meaningless. That is a meaning because we say so. We say it is meaningless, and that has a meaning. Which is the thing about language. It seems to only be capable of saying itself. And it doesn't appear to refer to things in the world, because language is a collection of universals. Even when I say this, here, now, well, the this and the here and the now that I just tried to point to with those words, if I was trying to refer to something, well, that something has already slipped through my fingers and dissolved in the flow of time. So language, if it does have a meaning, and it would appear phenomenologically that it does, must consist entirely of universals. And if they point to anything, if our words point to anything, it would be concepts, right? And so these pure universal concepts, categories, exist sort of as a superstructure, an invisible superstructure of language. Sort of the hidden logic of what we take as just sort of accidental, arbitrary grammar determined by culture and habit. There's actually a logic underlying our language, and it seems as though, as actually Whitehead and Bertrand Russell, I was going to read a section from Process of Reality. Whitehead and Russell tried to formulate or ground mathematics in set theory to show that math had some sort of a logical basis, and this project eventually failed, as Whitehead came later to think, because they had falsely characterized logic as sort of something dead and syllogistic, binary, merely a subject-predicate form of logic. And logic is actually far more dynamic than that. It's inherently dialectic, and Whitehead came in this book to devise a metaphysics and a cosmology that was of a processual orientation, meaning he thought time was irreducibly real and not a mere illusion. Aside from the second law of thermodynamics and the wave function, all other equations in physics are reversible. The direction that time goes doesn't matter so far as the accuracy of the equations is concerned. And Whitehead thought that this was due to the lack on the part of the equations, not the fact that time was an illusion. The final real things that the universe is made up of are not things at all. They're not particles. Rather, they are drops of experience, or what he called actual occasions, more like events, more like verbs than things, than nouns. So I want to just read a page and a half from chapter 1 of Whitehead's Process and Reality. Speculative philosophy is the endeavor to frame a coherent, logical, necessary system of general ideas in terms of which every element of our experience can be interpreted. By this notion of interpretation, I mean that everything of which we are conscious, as enjoyed, perceived, willed, or thought, shall have the character of a particular instance of the general scheme. Thus, the philosophical scheme should be coherent, logical, and in respect to its interpretation, applicable and adequate. Here, applicable means that some items of experience are thus interpretable, and adequate means that there are no items incapable of such an interpretation. Coherence, as here employed, means that the fundamental ideas, in terms of which the scheme is developed, presuppose each other so that in isolation they are meaningless. This requirement does not mean that they are definable in terms of each other. It means that what is indefinable in one such notion cannot be abstracted from its relevance to the other notions. It is the ideal of speculative philosophy that its fundamental notions shall not seem capable of abstraction from each other. In other words, it is presupposed that no entity can be conceived in complete abstraction from the system of the universe, and that it is the business of speculative philosophy to exhibit this truth. This character is its coherence. The term logical has its ordinary meaning, including logical consistency or lack of contradiction, the definition of constructs in logical terms, the exemplification of general logical notions in specific instances, and the principles of inference. It will be observed that logical notions must themselves find their places in the scheme of philosophic notions. It will also be noticed that this ideal of speculative philosophy has its rational side and its empirical side. The rational side is expressed by the terms coherent and logical. The empirical side is expressed by the terms applicable and adequate. But the two sides are bound together by clearing away an ambiguity which remains in the previous explanation of the term adequate. The adequacy of the scheme over every item does not mean adequacy over such items as happen to have been considered. It means that the texture of observed experience, as illustrating the philosophic scheme, is such that all related experience must exhibit the same texture. Thus, the philosophic scheme should be necessary, in the sense of bearing in itself its own warrant of universality throughout all experience, provided that we confine ourselves to that which communicates with immediate matter of fact. But what does not so communicate is unknowable, and the unknowable is unknown. Footnote reads that this doctrine is a paradox, indulging in a species of false modesty. Cautious philosophers undertake its definition. But what does not so communicate is unknowable, and the unknowable is unknown, and so this universality defined by communication can suffice. This doctrine of necessity in universality means that there is an essence to the universe which forbids relationships beyond itself, as a violation of its rationality. Speculative philosophy seeks that essence. Two more paragraphs. Philosophers can never hope finally to formulate these metaphysical first principles. Weakness of insight and deficiencies of language stand in the way inexorably. Words and phrases must be stretched towards a generality foreign to their ordinary usage, and however such elements of language be stabilized as technicalities, they remain metaphors mutely appealing for an imaginative leap. There is no first principle which is in itself unknowable, not to be captured by a flash of insight. But putting aside the difficulties of language, deficiency in imaginative penetration forbids progress in any form other than that of an asymptotic approach to a scheme of principles, only definable in terms of the ideal which they should satisfy. So I'll stop there. And I read those last two paragraphs because you spoke a lot about language, Rocky, and you were basically saying that language is dead, that it can't really tell us the truth, that it's just a lie based upon cultural contrivance of some sort. And, I would want to say that, in fact, there's a higher possibility for our language. because there is such a possibility, a higher possibility, you are able to say that the current state of language is in decay, um, only because you know there is a higher possibility for it, that in fact we can express truth. Certainly, I would agree with you that words can't contain truth, and so when Nietzsche says God is dead, perhaps he's just saying that we can't merely look to the doctrines written in the Bible for the truth about God, that dogma eventually dies. And if we are to make religion meaningful, if we are to make what binds us to the divine active in our lives, then we're going to have to bring to life again the meanings of the words that used to function meaningfully for people that read the Bible in the Middle Ages, say. And not that any sacred text from humanity's past can't be resurrected in the present and made meaningful, but we have to be able to be courageous enough to, each individually become our own poets and inspire ourselves. Perhaps humanity will only live as one when each individual has his or her own religion. Of course, there would have to be something universal that bound each of us as individuals together, that being love. And I think that can be offered as a universal, but no need to go there, really. You did say something about silence that I wanted to get to also, that before language there was silence. And I would say that no, in fact, there wasn't silence until after language. Only once the human being learned to speak could there be such a thing as an awkward silence, as if the space might be filled with something and so was recognized as empty prior to the possibility of filling it with meaningful words, vessels of meaning. There would be no way of recognizing silence. There wouldn't be the recognition of the lack. There would just be see what I mean? So yeah, I'll leave it at that. I know it was kind of fragmented and tangential at times, but hopefully you got the gist of what I was trying to say. And I think I'm pretty much disagreeing about language. I think, but I'm also confident that you may see where I'm coming from. If you don't, then maybe I'm wrong about language and you're right, because there was a failure of communication. But communication is itself an essential element of language, and so that's why I would agree with you that interpretation is always necessary, and we can never really pin down exactly what we mean because we're engaged in an ongoing dialogue, and while there is meaning, that meaning is not stable. We must continually produce it through our speech, through our conversation, and are, in a sense, responsible to one another for participating in that struggle to achieve meaning. If I give up, don't try to be understood, then you, in fact, are going to lack your own self-understanding, just as I will lack my own self-understanding. Language is important, I would say, because to disagree with you, again, unless I can say what I mean, I don't know what I mean. Unless I can articulate a vague intuition that I may have, then I don't really understand it. I may, imaginatively have pictured it, but I haven't brought it to the level of ideas and concepts and thoughts and understanding, which isn't to denigrate a sort of silent contemplation where you feel as though you have reunited with the whole, that's a beautiful experience. But knowledge is a different thing that does involve speaking, um, and without speech wouldn't be able to recognize itself as such. Um, the word is what gave Adam knowledge, to speak mythically. It's only then that the world, the natural world, could be categorized and so organized and to ever greater degrees controlled and predicted. Language gives us knowledge, and without it, while we may have deep appreciation and sublime feeling, I don't think we have understanding. So, yeah, let me know what you think. Take it easy, Rocky.